Welcome into the State Line Fast Break Podcast. I am your host, Kasey Boone. Alongside me, as always, it's the great Josh Miller.
Here we go. We are finally here post All-Star break, and we have got a lot to hit on today. Did we see a potential Western Conference Finals preview last night between the Nuggets and the Lakers? We're going to hit on rest of the season outlook, mid-season awards, and even some All-Star break. We got a lot to get into. Let's get started right now.
Let's jump right in. On Saturday night, the Lakers defeated the Nuggets 123-100. A lot to talk about in this game. One thing we want to hit on is how the Lakers defended Nikola Jokic. Josh, is this concerning to you moving forward?
This is very concerning as a Jokic avid supporter. I thought JJ Redick, just a masterclass coaching performance, completely fooled Michael Malone and his staff last night on, I'm not sure how, but it seemed like Jokic was lost last night. They were front guarding him. They originally started Jared Vanderbilt. They'd front guard him. Every time he'd catch the ball, if he could even catch the ball, you see 4 or 5 defensive Laker jerseys right behind him, taking away any potential shot. They said, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., everyone else, y'all try and beat us. Jokic, you are not going to beat us. He got frustrated. It threw him off. He finished with, I think, 7 shot attempts last night.
7 shot attempts, 2 of 7, 12 points.
Yeah, you're talking about the best player in basketball. You have got to be thrilled with the way when he's leaving a game with 7 shot attempts. And Luka finally hits his track last night, and I really liked his defensive intensity from the jump. He finished with 4 steals, I believe. And overall, this is concerning for the Nuggets to me, just because they do not match up with the Lakers. The Lakers are going to provide a matchup issue for just about everybody, as Luka has shown that his entire career. He's a very hard person to match up with, and every time they were hunting Jamal Murray, and how can you blame him? He can't stay in front of Luka. He can't stay in front of LeBron. It's creating an open 3 just about every time. And guys like Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves were knocking down shots last night. And these could have very well been a preview of another playoff matchup between the Nuggets and the Lakers. And now with JJ Redick's game planning with his staff, he's got 2-3 former head coaches on that staff with him, and man, that was really impressive last night. I cannot lie. So,
I think what's most concerning about the Nuggets right now is they don't have any perimeter defenders. So a team like the Lakers, we talk about a potential Western Conference Finals preview here, they got scores all over the place in the backcourt. And even though Jokic still put up a triple-double, if he's not on his A game, a team like the Lakers that's so dangerous with scores and multiple perimeter players that are super diverse in their skill set, it's going to be very hard for the Nuggets to compete against the Lakers. And in a 7-game series, I would be very concerned if I was the Nuggets about that matchup. Doesn't bode well when your best player only shoots 7 shots, but it also shows the greatness of Jokic. He still managed to put up a triple-double and have impacts on the game. Just not a lot of effort in the scoring department.
Well, he is the best player in basketball, far none, not a debate. I'm just going to put that out there right now. And you could just see his impact as Jared Vanderbilt, who ended up with 3 fouls in about 2 or 3 minutes into the ball game, which you're just going to have to live with that as a Lakers fan. But you have other defenders. You have a Rui Hachimura. You have a Dorian Finney-Smith. I don't remember Jackson Hayes. A lot of the talk before the game was Jackson Hayes. Obviously, he will not be able to guard Jokic one-on-one. That will be an easy bucket every single time.
Got to throw multiple defenders at him.
I don't remember Jackson Hayes even guarding Nikola Jokic one time last night. And he had his worst scoring performance he's had against the Lakers team in the first time without Anthony Davis being on the court, one of the premier defensive bigs in the game. So I do have a lot of concerns about that game, although I do think Michael Malone will, if these two teams were to play again, which I think they will. I mean, it's inevitable. It's almost every season at this point they are playing each other in the playoffs. But I think Michael Malone will have some sort of plan, but he's not going to have a plan for the three-headed monster with Luka Doncic. When his shot's falling, he's the second, third best player in basketball. LeBron James, if he is going to play as well as he did last night. And Austin Reeves, can we talk a little bit about what he's done? He has been unbelievable this year. And his offensive game, I'm not really sure who, especially on the Nuggets, who is going to be able to guard him. And his passing's been unbelievable this year.
Yeah, I don't think coming into the year many people expected Austin Reeves to be averaging almost 20 points per game. He's been on fire lately, and he is a perfect fit around Luka Doncic and LeBron James, a guy that can space the floor. And he's very underrated in terms of creating his own shot, which is something that the Lakers haven't had in years past. And if Reeves continues to take this step, I think you got to consider them a true title contender. There's a lot of concern about the Nuggets and what they can do moving forward. It should be interesting to see how they progress. But I think it's time to move on to kind of the play-in race, see how teams are stacking up there. I have a lot of thoughts being a fan of a team that's right in the thick of things, which losing Wemby, not really probably in something that we're looking at.
Nah, they're done. The Spurs are done. They're cooked. You might as well tank now.
I'm with you there. A team I think not a lot of people are really concerned about. They're an older team, but they just acquired Jimmy Butler. The Warriors, I think, are a team that people need to look out for. They've got Steph Curry. They've got Draymond Green. They got a Hall of Fame coach in Steve Kerr. The addition of Jimmy Butler has really boosted the morale around this team, and I think they're going to be one that if they can get into the playoffs, it's going to be a tough out.
Yeah, you have, I guess you're reading my notes or something over here, because this is the team that they are my sleeper team. And I do not like the Warriors. I'm going to go ahead and start with that. So it kind of pains me to even say this, and I think it's embarrassing Draymond going out there and guaranteeing a championship. But, man, Jimmy Butler, especially come playoff time, all I'm saying is I would not want to play this Warriors team just because they do have the championship pedigree. Jimmy Butler has shown he can turn it on at any given point. And, I mean, I know they haven't played a lot of competition through these first couple games with Jimmy Butler, but if I'm a Warriors fan, I'm got to be bullish on this team. They are concerning. Where do they sit at the 9 seed right now?
29 and 27, 2 games out of 8. With the Mavericks and Timberwolves both sitting at 31 and 26.
And I can't help but think the Mavericks are going to slip, even though Kyrie is holding. He's playing his best ball. He is holding on to that seed there, but I do think with the way that their big situation, all of a sudden they had the best big situation. Now they're all injured, so I could definitely see the Warriors. Making their way even out of the play-in tournament, and if they really catch stride here. Although the Timberwolves, I have my concerns with. I could get into that about going back to the off-season with the Karl Anthony Towns trade. I didn't like that trade, and they are I don't think they're anywhere near as scary as they were a year ago at this point.
A team that I think players need to watch out for, the Los Angeles Clippers. If they can get Kawhi Leonard healthy and playing down the stretch with the emergence of James Harden, he's almost having a resurgent year, was an all-star again. Very underrated, now, after, in my opinion, he was pretty overrated for most of his career. And now you've got a guy, Norman Powell, who's averaging 24 points per game. The addition of Ben Simmons, it adds another layer of a big guy who's got a skill set that can really attack defenders in multiple ways. He's a good defensive player. Zubac is having a great year. He's a walking double-double. Great rebounder. Not a lot of teams in the Western Conference have a super dominant perimeter interior big man like Zubac who can go and impact the game in a bunch of different ways. I think the Clippers are dangerous. You talked about the Timberwolves a little bit. I do have my concerns about them. I agree with you. I don't like the Cat trade, and I think it leaves them kind of weak in the big department, especially when we've seen in the playoffs, even when he was on the Jazz, Rudy Gobert gets played off the court. So much talk about how great of a defender he is, but you can't trust him to play in the playoffs. The Mavericks, I think they're going to be a team that if they can get in, get Anthony Davis healthy, get Gafford healthy, get Lively healthy, that's a team that can go on a run. But again, we don't know when those guys are going to be back. Kyrie can only do so much. The Warriors love the way they look now with Jimmy Butler. Going to be a tough out. The Kings, I have a lot of concerns. I think with the Kings, the addition of Zach LaVine, losing De'Aaron Fox, they're trying to figure out how to mesh things together. They added Valanciunas. It's a weird roster. I don't like Malik Monk and LaVine. They're trying to play them in the backcourt together, but they're similar players. They don't have a true point guard on the roster. I think that's a team that's probably going to be outside looking in.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know what Sacramento's doing. I think that they are heading towards. A couple years ago, they were atop of the Western Conference. I want to say they were a 2 seed. Everyone thought, this is a young team heading up. I do not like the direction that they've gone in. They fired Mike Brown right through the year. They traded away their best player and got absolutely. I mean, they did get LaVine out of it. It was more Chicago who took the brunt of that deal. But I don't understand what the Kings are doing, and I could see them easy. I could see Phoenix maybe putting something together, although I really don't have many great things to say about Phoenix. Kevin Durant has been playing very well as of late, but
he's got a step and a hat foot out the door already. He's already looking at the next team he's been playing for.
That will definitely be something we talk about in a future episode, and just I could maybe Houston, who knows. But pull back the Western Conference standings, please. The Clippers, you touched on the Clippers. I do agree with you. Zubac is a 2020. How many? I don't know how many 2020 games he's had.
He's had several this year.
He has really been good, and I was just going to throw this in there. The Lakers used to have him. Imagine him with Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves.
Gave him away for nothing.
That, if I'm a Lakers fan,
I'd be sick thinking about it.
And who knows what happens. But I want to switch sides to the Eastern Conference and talk about a team that has really just disappointed, and they deserve to be talked about in a negative way. The Philadelphia 76ers. What in the world has happened? I just want to hear your thoughts a little bit about what Paul George has not done this year.
16 points per game. This guy is perennial all-star. They paid him a ton of money this offseason. He was expected to be the guy that took him to the 1 seed, the 2 seed, playing for a chance to go to the finals. Conference finals lock, some people were saying before the season. He's been abysmal. You can't keep Embiid on the floor. There's only so much that they can do with Tyrese Maxey. The roster itself, it's not very good. Losing McCain early in the year has really hurt them. He stepped up in a big way. Was probably the front runner for Rookie of the Year before he got hurt for the year. Old man Kyle Lowry hasn't done anything for him. It's just not a very good roster. And when you don't have your 2 best players supposedly on the court at any given time, it's a very hard game to play when you're rolling the dice like that. And they're sitting at 12th with 20 wins. This was a team that people expected to potentially win 60 games before the year.
Yeah,
and they might not even get to 30.
They have been, like you said, abysmal this year. And as far as I'm concerned, the East, is a 3-team race. And the Cavaliers have been unbelievable this year. I cannot say enough good things about what Kenny Atkinson's done for that team. Although, I want to start getting into who our favorites are, who your favorite is in the East and who your favorite is in the West, and I'll start. I'm still going to stick with Boston. I don't care about they've had a couple games this year where they haven't been quite as good this year as they were last year. Although they didn't lose anybody. I don't understand how Brad Stevens has continued to put this roster together. It seems like everyone on their roster is on a max deal. When they still have Drew Holiday these last couple of years of his career, I definitely am still going to favor Boston, potentially overall, but I definitely see them, even if they have to go on the road to Cleveland in a Eastern Conference Finals, I will still favor Boston going forward. Who do you favor in the East?
I'm with you there. It's going to be hard to pick against Boston. Their team hasn't been healthy this year. Kristaps was out for a good part of the year to start the year. Jaylen Brown's been in and out of the lineup the last few weeks. But they're just so talented. They're just so deep. Sam Hauser can shoot the lights out. They've got probably the 6th Man of the Year favorite in Peyton Pritchard.
There's no doubt.
He's a stud. Just comes in, brings them some energy, knocks down shots. He's the perfect player to have around these stars. You got Jason Tatum, of course, perennial MVP candidate. A guy that doesn't get talked about enough. The great Derek White.
I agree.
Makes an impact on the defensive end, which is something. Him and Drew Holiday, great defensive backcourt. Not a lot of teams in the NBA have 2 guards like that are great scorers, that can put the ball on the floor, get to the basket, that can shoot, but also take the challenge of defending the other team's best player. That's a luxury that only the Celtics have. I think the Knicks are going to give them a run for their money. I love the way that their roster stacks out. If they can keep healthy, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Brunson's a dude, and he's going to get you buckets at the end of the games. How they got him for pretty much nothing from Dallas. Great job by Leon Rose and that staff there. It's a great team. They got Karl Anthony Towns, who's a big guy that they haven't had in years past. He's got a great relationship with Tibbs. That's a roster, when they get Mitchell Robinson healthy, that I think can give the Celtics a run for their money. I'm not sold on Cleveland yet. I think they've got a talented roster, but I still think we need another jump from them. I'd like to see more. I do love the addition of DeAndre Hunter. Evan Mobley's a great player, but I still think they're missing that true go-to alpha guy at the end of the game, which I think the Celtics have multiple guys that can do that. I think the Knicks have Cat and Brunson who can do that. And like you said, it's a 3-team race. The Pacers are a talented team. They made it to the conference finals last year. I don't think they've got enough to contend with these teams. The Bucks with Giannis and Dame, so much uncertainty around them. Bobby Portis just suspended for 25 games. That's going to be a big hurt for them off the bench, especially when they're already pretty low on depth. Not sold that Kuzma's going to be a great fit there. I love the young up-and-coming Pistons team, but I just don't think they've got enough around Cade yet. It's a team that I don't think many people expected to win 30 games this year, and they've got it with still 30 games to play. That's impressive to me, but like you said, I think it comes down to the Celtics and the Knicks, but I'm still going to favor the talent of the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks, I do really like what the Knicks are doing, and I think it's just a shame. I believe they might be playing here in about an hour today.
Yeah, they play Boston today, so we get a little bit of a, in my opinion, Eastern Conference Finals caliber game today, which we might not get it in the conference finals this year, but
yeah, I do like what the Knicks are doing. I'm a big Jalen Brunson fan. I have my concerns with Karl Anthony Towns, although I cannot deny the fact how good of a season he has had playing alongside of Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby.
He's averaging 13 rebounds a game.
Yeah,
13 rebounds.
I think he may be the lead. At least he's definitely in the top 3. But I still favor Boston. I do like what you said about Detroit, although I don't see them doing anything. Cleveland, we have to give them credit because, I mean, they've been the best team in basketball alongside Oklahoma City this year. But Obviously Donovan Mitchell, great player, but I like how Boston has the defenders to match up with him and Garland, and that's why I will favor them because of what you said about Derek White, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Spur legend, and imagine if he was still a Spur. Anyways, but
that one hurts. That one hits home.
So I like how they are going to be able to, and we've already seen it a couple times, the matchup with Cleveland and Boston, but I still, with all that being said, yes, Milwaukee, I just I can't trust them. For whatever reason, I mean, I love Giannis, love Dame, although I don't like the team around it enough. And now you lose Bobby Portis what do we do? That's an embarrassment to him or whoever made that mistake of getting suspended for the rest of the year. And that really hurts them and hurts a Doc Rivers on this team. But overall, in the East, I'm still going to favor Boston, and slightly right now I favor them throughout. But to get into the Western Conference, a lot of teams here. As a Grizzlies fan, I'm just going to be honest. We've had a great season up to this point, although we are not a match for the Oklahoma City Thunder. From top to bottom, there's not many bad things to say about this team, especially adding Hartenstein in the offseason, going and getting to Alex Caruso, seeing what sort of they were missing in that playoff series against Dallas last year. They attempted to fix those holes, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, had an unbelievable season this year. I favored them to make it out of the Western Conference. There's just too many shooters on that team, and they are very tied in defensively. Jalen Williams, first All-Star appearance this year. Chet Holmgren, been out most of the year, and they haven't blinked an eye. Their first 20 games with Hartenstein, I believe they were 18-2 or some crazy stat like that. Hartenstein could fit on any team in basketball, and he's been a great addition to this team. And I'm going to favor the Oklahoma City Thunder, although there are some other teams that can give them issues, and I'm just gonna go back to obviously the Nuggets, because there's just no one who can match up with Nikola Jokic on their team. But the Lakers, I do think that they could give them issues simply because of a man named Luka Doncic and the way that the Thunder lost to him last year. There's not anyone in the Western Conference who's going to be able to match up with the Luka Doncic. Overall, we saw that last year, and now you put him alongside LeBron and Austin Reeves like we talked about earlier. Although I think the Thunder just have too much top to bottom. Isaiah Joe, there's so many guys on that team that make the right plays at the right time, and you're always going to know you're going to get 30 points out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's a great defender as well, and when Chet Holmgren gets integrated back, which they haven't even needed him up to this point, they're going to need him come playoff time, but they look like they're going to run away with home court this year, and I think we're going to see them playing Boston in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, like you said, with the Thunder, Hartenstein has played 35 games. That means he's missed 20. Holmgren's played 14, which means he's missed almost 40 games. And they're still runaway 8.5-point games up on second place. They're too talented. They're too deep top to bottom. Like you said, we have seen a guy like Luka Doncic give them problems in the past. They've got some guys that can throw at him, but they don't have the true alpha defenders that I think Boston have that was able to give him trouble last year. Like you said with the Grizzlies, super talented team, overachieving. Jaren Jackson's probably the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year now that Wemby's out. Zach Edey, they've gotten some production from. I love the way that they've gotten production from guys that weren't really expected to give them a ton this year. Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr., Luke Kennard's been great shooting the ball. They've got some guys that really give teams trouble, but again, it's a team like Cleveland where I worried that they have that true alpha number one that's going to get them late game buckets at the end. especially against teams like the Nuggets, who have Jokic and Jamal, who we've seen late game in the playoffs, in the finals, be able to put up tough shots, make tough shots, will their team to win. I don't know that the Grizzlies have that. The Lakers obviously have that. We've seen it with LeBron over his 20-plus years. We've seen it from Luka last year. The Rockets really surprised early. They're kind of falling off. They're pretty much in the same situation as the Grizzlies, in my opinion.
3-7 in their last 10.
3-7 in their last 10. I struggle, like we talked about. Maybe getting Durant would be something that could push them into the title contention for next year, but that's again a story down the line. The Clippers, again, I'll go back to them. If they can get Kawhi healthy, having James Harden, having Kawhi, that roster around them is really deep, really talented. That's a team that I could see. They're in one of my top 4 in the Western Conference of teams that can really compete. I think it's the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Lakers, the Clippers, and then an asterisk for the Mavericks if Anthony Davis and those big guys can get healthy. Those are the 5. I think the Western Conference is way more open than what the Eastern Conference is. The Eastern Conference, I think it's Boston's to lose. The Western Conference, we really don't know. We haven't really seen the Thunder be able to win big games. The Nuggets have their own problems this year. A guy that the Nuggets are really missing, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's been a big loss for them. If they had him, I think they would be... Him and Bruce Brown, 2 big losses over the last couple years for them.
Lost them for nothing.
If they still had those guys, I think they'd be 1A title contenders, favorites in the West. But we just don't know about their depth. We don't know about their ability to put guys around. Aaron Gordon hasn't stayed healthy. Michael Porter Jr., inconsistent, doesn't provide you much else on the court besides his scoring ability. It's wide open. I'm going to lead Thunder because of the talent that they've got, and if they can integrate Holmgren and Hartenstein and get great production from them and at least throw, I could see them pulling out a strategy, and like several teams have done against the Nuggets, where you don't even play your big guy defending Jokic. You throw a smaller guy on him who's a little bit pesky, can get low, who can give him problems when he's dribbling, because he's going to play out on the perimeter a lot, and you don't really want Holmgren or Hartenstein stepping out there and having to guard Jokic from 30 feet. So they're a team that has guards and wings that can defend, and they can throw multiple guys like what the Lakers did last night against Jokic. I struggle to really see a 1A in the Western Conference right now. I think I'm with you. I would lean the Thunder, but there's several teams I think can give them a run for their money. And I don't think it's going to be an easy playoff race for whoever gets out of there, and they're going to be pretty banged up going into that final series.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I say we get a little bit into mid-season awards, and we've touched on it a little bit. We've seen, the Defensive Player of the Year. Let's start with the Defensive Player of the Year. This award was all but locked away with before we got the news Friday, I believe, about Victor Wembanyama not going to be able to play the rest of the season. And now that it's, according to most betting odds right now, Jaren Jackson Jr. is the current favorite, which, great news as a Grizzlies fan to hear, although the repercussions that could come with that is a 5-year extension worth $345 million, which would, I believe that's $69-70 million a year. As a Grizzlies fan, little concerned about being to pay Jaren Jackson Jr. that much money. Although it would be a second, and he's had an unbelievable season, and we are still sitting at the 2 seed. But I'd like to hear your thoughts overall as a Spurs fan about this Wemby loss. It's very unfortunate overall for the game of basketball, and hopefully it's not a long-term serious issue, although we've seen it be that way for some guys in the past. And a little bit about how he isn't eligible anymore due to the last player agreement of 65 game minimum for all NBA awards. So
it's disappointing, but I'm glad we caught the injury when we did for Wemby, because you don't want something like this to really linger over him and potentially move around and get closer to the heart. And we've seen it with Chris Bosh. Once it kind of gets into that area, it's career threatening. You can't play basketball again. So they caught it while it's in his shoulder, while it's stagnant, hasn't moved. From all reports, they believe he's going to be ready to go for next year. It's disappointing as a Spurs fan because you just want to see Wemby out there playing. You want to see him healthy. You want to see the connection being built with him and De'Aaron Fox. We saw a little bit of that, but Wemby the last few weeks hasn't really looked right. And we got an answer to why that is now. The low energy levels, some of the conditioning issues because of the blood clot. So it's encouraging that they caught this and are able to move forward, get treatment, get him right for next year. The Spurs are lost in the play-in race now. You're just going to have to hope that guys like De'Aaron Fox, Castle, they get some run together. They improve. We kind of see who we want to keep going into next year because it's going to be a big test. You're going to have Wemby, you're going to have Fox, you're going to have your star duo. It sucks for the game of basketball to lose a guy like Wemby. The 65-game minimum, it sucks for players like him who's so young, who was on track to be one of the most decorated players in the history of the game. He was likely going to be first-team All-NBA this year. He's going to lose out on that. Was going to be the Defensive Player of the Year this year. He's going to lose out on that. That hurts. That hurts a player like Wemby. That hurts the league to have guys like that. But I think the 65-game minimum, the best ability is availability, and I completely understand why they do it. It hurts the players, but I think it is good for the game to have kind of that minimum because it sets a standard. You've got to be on the floor. You've got to be playing. You can't have guys like Joel Embiid play 20-something games his rookie year and still get Rookie of the Year. Now, like you said, Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably the odds-on favorite. Evan Mobley's probably a close second. Dyson Daniels, who's had a great impact on the defensive,
averaging 3 steals a game right now.
Just crazy defensive effort. Jaren Jackson, like you said, it's concerning. He's going to win, and it's going to put the Grizzlies in this new apron system. Like, they're going to have very limited options of being able to improve the roster if you're paying a guy, Jaren Jackson, who's a great player, but I wouldn't consider him a perennial All-NBA guy, a perennial MVP candidate, and you're going to be paying him among the top 5 to 10 players in the league. I would be concerned as a Grizzlies fan having to shell out that type of money for a player like that. He's a great player, no doubt, and he's a player that I would say majority of the NBA want on their roster. But at that price tag, I think it really hurts the Grizzlies' ability to move forward and build a competitive roster around him and Joe.
Yeah, it's very concerning, but I mean exciting at the same time. You obviously want your player on your favorite team to win Defensive Player of the Year, but the repercussions that the way the NBA contracts are set up, it is a little concerning. Although I also agree with you about the 65-game minimum being an issue, but I can't be that mad at it because the players, this was in the last players agreement. The NBA agreement, whatever, sets so many years they do that, and this was in the last one. The players okayed this, and I don't think it's it's good in some aspects, like you mentioned Embiid, but overall it will hurt guys like Wemby. And then we see how the NBA contracts are set up. You get more money per each All-NBA, All-Star, all these type of things. And Wemby, I mean, it was a runaway Defensive Player of the Year. He was leading the league in blocks, not even close, which he did that last year too. But
he's still probably going to end the year with the most blocks in the league. Like, I think Jaren Jackson has to get like 60 or 70 blocks the rest of the way. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just crazy impact on the defensive end, and it sucks for him that he's going to lose out on this award. But again, you've got to prioritize the health of the player, and I'm glad that they caught it. He's going to be back next year and have a chance to go forward again. It's unfortunate, scary situation, but like you said, you want to look out for the player. And the 65-game minimum ensures that we've got a competitive balance. You want to see the players on the court playing, and the guys who play the most deserve to be recognized for it. So, I mean, the award, it'll probably have an asterisk on it, but Jaren Jackson's a great defensive player, and he deserves all the recognition for it. And again, like you said, you'd love to see guys on your team and guys get recognition for the impact that they make on the court. And so whether it's him or Mobley, I think it's going to be great for the game of basketball to have several young, athletic big men who are making impacts on the game of basketball on the defensive end that we haven't really seen in the last few years.
Yeah, okay, so we've touched on the Defensive Player of the Year. I want to do a quick hit on the Coach of the Year, although this is a pretty much a runaway. Kenny Atkinson, I don't know if anyone... I think we all knew the Cavaliers were a great team, but for them to be sitting six games ahead, at least as far as the records show right now, Kenny Atkinson, definitely the Coach of the Year. And the betting odds favorite for most improved player of the year is Norman Powell right now, averaging 24 a game, which is 10 up from his average last year when he averaged 14. And obviously everyone's seen, Norman Powell dating back to his Toronto days. I mean, he has always been a bucket getter, but his game, with Kawhi being out most of the year, him having to take more shots, has worked out for this Clippers team, and I would not be mad if he ends up with the most improved player. And
he's very deserving of it.
Yeah, I think we both agree on both of these awards, so we don't need to get...
I will touch on, I do think your team, the Grizzlies, Taylor Jenkins, deserves recognition, should be right up there in the Coach of the Year conversation.
No.
And then a player who was already great but has made another leap, has got the Pistons in the playoff race. Cade Cunningham, also a candidate for most improved player, should be considered, but the impact that Norman Powell has made, especially in the absence of Kawhi Leonard, has kept the Clippers relevant. Him and Harden are carrying that team. They're going to be competitive in the playoffs regardless of if they get Kawhi or not, and that's due to the jump that Norman Powell has made. Super impressive. Should be recognized at the end of the year with the most improved player award.
Yeah, I agree. And now I'm going to say some things that may not resemble the betting odds, but I'm just going to be honest, I don't really care, because the MVP award should be going to it's MVP, most valuable player. There is a man in Denver, Colorado, who is not going to win this award based on the betting odds, although if I had a vote, I would be placing my first place vote with Nikola Jokic. And these numbers may have changed slightly because I did this before the All-Star break. Although before the All-Star break, which they shouldn't have changed much, averaging 29.8 points per game, 12.6 rebounds per game, 10.2 assists per game, shooting 57% from the floor, 45% from three, which is top 3 in the league this year. He sat out of 12 fourth quarters, and after last night, he is up to 26 triple-doubles with 25-30 games left in the season, and his career season best triple-doubles is 29. So he is definitely going to shatter that, and there is a shot he goes after his teammate Westbrook's most in a single season. But if you look at the betting odds, Shea is his worst odds across all betting odds is minus 500, and it gets all the way. I've seen him as heavy as favorite as minus 835. So, I mean, he's all but won this award. The only way he wouldn't is if they start to slip, and Jokic just can't play better than what he's playing up to this point. He's having his best statistical season, and he's already won 3 MVP awards. And the best odds that he's got right now, sitting at second, is plus 350 and plus 400. But I don't want to belittle the season that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's had. I think he's had an unbelievable season and definitely has an argument for MVP. I mean, obviously you see it, just how much. I mean, leading the league in scoring, 32 points a game, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, and he's the best player on his team, and we touched on it earlier, missing Chet Holmgren, missing Hartenstein. This is the main reason he's leading this award. We saw this a couple years ago. The reason Jokic won his award as a 6 or 7 seed was because Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. were out pretty much the whole season. He kept them afloat, and he got an MVP out of it. Shai Gilgeous, the same thing's going to happen this year if things continue the way they are. And he's very much deserving of it. Although, the way Jokic has played, you watch him night in, night out. There's not a more valuable player in basketball. You see him when he walks off the court, his team is almost, they look lost because he does so much for them. But I hate to belittle the season that Shai's having, and I know no one's going to agree with me on this, but if I had a vote, I would still be voting Nikola Jokic just because this is his best season he's ever had. And he's been the best player in basketball for, I would argue, 4 straight seasons now. But, I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this MVP. It's a 2-man race, and Shai is obviously leading it, but it's a 2-man game, and so...
There's no doubt. It's 2 guys. It's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, it's Nikola Jokic. Like you said, there's not many players really in the history of basketball that impacts the game on the offensive side of the ball that Nikola Jokic has. Why I would place my vote on Shai is the defensive impact that I think he makes. Almost 2 steals a game, a block a game from a guard. He's impacting the game not only offensively but defensively, averaging the career highs, 32 points per game, playing 34 minutes a game. He's making an impact. He's carrying a team that's been without some of their big guys. They've got such a talented roster around him, and that's probably the biggest difference with the Thunder versus the Nuggets. Like, Jokic doesn't have the team around him, but he still puts up historic offensive numbers. I just think the defensive impact that Shai has made this year specifically, he's made a concerted effort. I love the way he competed in the All-Star game, was playing hard, especially in that first game defensively. He brings that impact. He sets the tone for their team. They're in first place by far in the Western Conference. They've got the best roster. They've got the best team. They've got the best odds to make it to the finals. I think part of it is, too, is there's so much voter fatigue around Nikola Jokic. People are tired of seeing him win it year after year after year after year. But he's well deserving of it and should be in consideration. And there's a reason every single year he's on the court, he's going to be in consideration for it. He's a walking triple-double. He's a great player. He's an all-time great. But I think this year with Shai, the way he's made an impact, jumped in scoring, 32 points a game, seen multiple 50-point outings over the last few weeks, has only gotten better as the year's gone on. I don't think you can go wrong with who you can pick here. I just think it's personal preference. I love the impact that he's made on the defensive end, and that would be the separation for me this year. But, again, I don't know how you can really separate these two. They're both 1A, 1B. They both are deserving of the MVP. It's going to be a tight race. Like you said, Shai's probably going to win it, and I do think a lot of that is because of voter fatigue. They're tired of seeing Jokic win it year after year after year.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how it's by far a 2-man race, and this has been the case for I'd say the past couple weeks, maybe more.
Do you have a sleeper right now? If there's a guy that takes Shai and Jokic out of it, like without that guy on that team, is there really a guy that you can put up? Like, because I think if you even take Tatum off Boston, like that roster's so good.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Like,
I believe Tatum may be third in the race, or the odds.
The Cavs, again, I think Brunson, would be a sneaky candidate for that.
High up in odds.
I think he would be that. That would probably might be my third player right now. Without Brunson on that team, they're going nowhere. They don't have a true ball bucket getter, that ball dominant guard like that. If they took him off that Knicks team, they're probably sitting at 500 right now. He would be right up there for me as the next guy on that list, but. Besides, it's hard to really...
I think it would be Jason Tatum, and I believe it would be Jason Tatum based on some of the same things we say about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He has such good players around him, so does Shai, although Jason Tatum's night in, night out impact, averaging 27, 5.7 assists, 8.7 rebounds a game. He's the best player on his team, and though they don't have the best record in basketball, a lot of people would still consider them the best team in basketball. So the best player in basketball on the best team in basketball, having another great season. He's a walking 30-point game. The only knock on him is his team's so good around him. There's days where he doesn't shoot great, and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that will hurt you in the MVP. But you see last night, Jokic he only gets to take 7 shot attempts. They lose by 23. So, like, when you look at true value to a team, there's two guys. I mean, yes, Brunson, although his numbers just aren't as good as Shea and Jokic. But I do agree, he probably has maybe the third best impact to a team right now. But I don't think it's close as far as impact on two basketball teams with Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and it's hard to argue that these aren't the two best players in basketball for the past 2 seasons. But I say we get into a little bit of the All-Star. I know we're a week removed.
I'd like to touch on Rookie of the Year real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
With Rookie of the Year, I think there's obviously I'm going to be biased. I think it's Castle's award to lose. Like, I think he's the front runner right now. But there's a lot of guys, rookies, that have made an impact. This was considered a weak draft class coming into it. The Spurs obviously got a guy in Castle at 4 who's made a great impact for him. The Grizzlies have done great finding 2 players, Jalen Wells, Zach Edey, that have made an impact in that conversation for the Rookie of the Year. Obviously, I'd love to see Castle win it. It would be back-to-back for the Spurs, and I think he's the front runner. They need to start playing him more. He played 13 minutes the other night, and that's unacceptable for a team that just lost their best player and is likely looking at a trip to the lottery. Got to find a way to get that guy more minutes.
Yeah.
Do you have another sleeper potentially for Rick? Because I still think it's a wide open race going into 2 months left in the season.
Yeah, Stephon Castle is the favorite. He's been the favorite for a couple weeks now. He's sitting at the best odds I've seen, plus 120. I've seen it at plus 150, and a guy who I believe doesn't really get talked about a whole lot is Khalil Ware on the Miami Heat.
It's a great one. I was going to bring that one up too.
I think he's got a super bright future, and I've seen his odds plus 250, plus 350. The Rookie of the Year odds, I've been keeping up with them the past couple of weeks. They shift.
Right now on DraftKings, they've got it Castle minus 185, Wells plus 650, Khalil Ware plus 1,200, Zach Edey all the way down at plus 2,000. So they've got Castle as a heavy favorite right now, Wells and Ware right behind them.
This award, it changes a lot, but Castle has been leading it. I mean, you see Risa Shea, and obviously I'm going to talk about Jalen Wells a little bit. I have been just blown away by his impact to this Grizzlies team this year. We put him on the best team's guard night in, night out, and he battles all night long, and he's been able to shoot the 3. I love that we somehow found Jalen Wells in the second round. Zach Edey, numbers, I mean, I do like his future, but we expected this out of him. Jalen Wells, take him in the second round. He's been a top player on your team all year this year, especially defensively. I love, obviously, Castle's great defensively as well.
Yeah, that's what I love about those two. They both, night in, night out, are going to guard the other players, the best perimeter player on the other team. They take that challenge, and that's not very common for rookies. You don't see them having that intensity on the defensive end. They want to guard on the defensive end. Competitive nature from the both of them. They're both incredibly great players, and they're going to have very bright futures in this league. And it's good to see 2 guards like that coming in, wanting to play defense. It's similar to what we talked about with Derek White and Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
Having those guards that aren't afraid to take the ball on the dribble to the basket, but also step down on the other end, guard the team's best player, find ways to make impact in more than one ways on the court.
Yeah, both of these
Very
guys.
impressive guards.
Both of these guys are going to make a lot of money in their careers. They're going to be valued for a long time based on their willingness to guard the best team's best player night in, night out. But I do believe that the way this rookie year's class has been, it could be Alex Sarr could get hot a couple weeks, and all of a sudden he's the favorite. So this could go a couple different ways.
Very well. Whoever gets hot down the stretch here.
Yeah, Castle is. If it was ended today, I do believe he would win.
This is no way going to be a unanimous MVP vote like last season. It's going to be a tight race with 25 to 30 games left in the year for most of these guys. Like, now's the time where they're going to have to start making a run at it, showing their impact on the court. It's going to be a fun race, but I think now you wanted to jump into a little bit about the All-Star game, some overall thoughts, how we feel about the format. What do we think about this year's format, and do you have any suggestions on how we can improve the All-Star game? Because there's a lot of scrutiny about it. We've seen the impact that hockey was able to make with the Four Nations face-off. They went pretty viral on the internet for the way that All-Star format worked. The NBA is under a lot of scrutiny. They're going to have to make changes. They've made changes year in and year out. Do you have a solution and fix?
I'm just going to add to the scrutiny. The All-Star weekend has been atrocious, and it's really sad to see because as someone who looks so forward to the All-Star weekend, it's embarrassing to argue. It's embarrassing to argue about the NBA in this aspect. And ways to improve, I mean, the main thing I can say here is play harder. That is that's all we want. They play hard in the off season. I don't see how this. I mean, I understand the injury concern, yes, but just play a little bit harder. And we did see this in the new format. But I do agree with Draymond in the fact that seeing these rookies and second year players on a Sunday night is just it's they don't deserve to be there yet. But it is the players' fault that the NBA has had to try this format. And personally, I didn't like the format, but I did like the effort that was played. And we saw it in hockey. And it's inevitable that it needs to happen at this point, is a world versus USA matchup. I mean, however many last MVPs and going to be another one this year is non-US players. The world has completely caught up. This would be a amazing matchup, and I would favor the world in that matchup, depending on the effort that would take place. And there's not going to be many times on this podcast where I'm critiquing Nikola Jokic. I'm just going to be honest. But I'm going to do it here in episode 1. And this is probably going to be the last time you hear it. But he is the biggest part of the problem with the All-Star weekend, in my opinion. Based on how he simply just doesn't care. And I mean, I'm not mad at him for doing that. He can do what he wants. But he does not try whatsoever, and he never really has in an All-Star game. And I don't think that there's going to be any other way to get him to try other than some sort of incentive. But if they do go back to the East-West, the only fix, in my opinion, is to copy baseball's deal where the winner of the East or the West gets home court in the conference or in the finals. I wouldn't like to see that, although if it works, I'm not going to complain, because all anyone wants to do, NBA fans want to see, is effort shown. And I do have a little bit of thoughts on the one-on-one tournament. I do think that would be a great addition. I'd like to see that on a Saturday night, and then either a East-West or a USA World on a Sunday night. The one-on-one tournament feels like it's going to happen based on the little bit of smoke that has been talked about on Twitter. And the deal with the one-on-one tournament is, how do you do the matchups? You're going to have bigs on bigs, because if you get a Giannis versus a Kyrie, I mean, what is the incentive going to be? Are players going to play hard? But I could see players who don't get talked about, don't get a lot of shine, win a one-on-one tournament just because these players are so talented. Clips surfaced about the Cam Reddish in a Lakers practice winning one-on-ones against everybody. I mean, that could happen. I do think it would be very interesting to see. Although, ways to improve: play harder, add a real incentive of home court advantage in the finals to the East or West. But I think the most entertaining thing for me would be a East or a USA World, because of the talent on the world side now. And they have already came out and said, Giannis came out and said, look, we want this. We are going to play hard. But Luka and Jokic, can the NBA convince them to actually play hard? Because these are two of the top 3 players in basketball, and players are going to follow the leaders here. And I mean, those are two of the premier faces across the world when you look at basketball. And when it comes to All-Star Weekend, they do not care. They go out there, they just do what they need to do. They show up, they go to the practice, they play around. But when it comes to the game, not much effort in by those two. I do like Wemby. Wemby really impressed me, his approach to the All-Star Weekend. He played it just like any other game, and that could be a great sign for the NBA moving forward, because he is so competitive. And people in the whenever he turns into the face in the NBA, I could see people following his lead on that.
There's so much to talk about when it comes to this. You've got, like you said, you've got to find a way to incentivize it. You talked about home court in the finals. There's a lot of guys that probably are not going to be competing for a chance to make the playoffs or even a chance to make a run in the finals. So then it comes back to, well, do they really care? People talk about throwing $1 million per player as the winner, like try to incentivize them with money. But then there comes scrutiny from the fans, like, why are you giving players more money? Why don't you do something charitable about it? And then there's questions and concerns about that. I do like the thought of a one-on-one tournament, because I think, like you said, I think I would put it on Saturday night, because a lot of those events have gotten stale. But then you get into the situation again, like the dunk contest and some of these others, like, are you going to be able to get your stars out and play in it? Or is it just going to be a bunch of Andre Jacksons and Zachary Richachets and young guys, or guys that just want to go out there on All-Star Weekend and compete and show their name? It's going to be a hard challenge to find a way to get these guys to compete. I do love the idea of a USA versus World, or like hockey, 4 nations face off, have different countries, have something pride on the line. We saw the competitiveness of these players when they got into the Olympics this past year. USA, France, Serbia, all these different countries with something to prove. They've got pride in their country, and we've seen with the Olympics, we've seen with hockey, we've seen with these different USA versus Worlds, when your country and your pride is on the line, players step up and they play hard for that. They want to make an impact. It means something to them. They have pride and heritage. I think that's a way to do it. How they're going to be able to do it, whether it's USA versus World, or they're going to have multiple different countries, I think you can piggyback off that, and you can adjust it and see how it goes over a few years. That's something that I would like to see them do. They're going to have to find a way to incentivize it. Like you said, they've got to play harder. But how are they going to get these guys to play harder? It's not just as simple as, hey, we need you to play harder. The players really have to take pride in it. There's got to be something for them that makes them want to compete hard. Like you said, Shea, Wemby, some of these guys, they really showed their pride and they competed out there. But they were just a few of them that did. How do we get these older guys? How do we get guys to follow the lead of those players to compete, play hard? It's a tough conversation, because I think the whole weekend itself is flawed. The Rising Stars, like you said, getting to play on Sunday, I don't particularly like it. I'm glad that some of these guys got that opportunity for their sake. It showed their competitiveness on that stage. But the All-Star game needs to be the All-Star game. The All-Stars need to be playing on Sunday night. Love the Rising Stars game on Friday. I think that's probably the best event of the weekend, because of the competitiveness of those guys and the way that they compete. On Saturday, some of these events have just become lesser-named players, and they don't put up the type of performances that our stars of the game would put up. We need to find a way to get these guys out there on Saturday night and competing. We got to find a way to get them to compete harder on Sundays. I don't know that there's an easy fix, and I'm sure Adam Silver and that staff with the NBA are trying to figure it out and are constantly making improvements to it. But that's something that I think is going to take time, and I would love to see them do a USA versus World format. Now, as we close the show here, I want to talk about a little bit about some of the games today. Obviously, the Spurs and Grizzlies are both playing tonight, and Spurs not so much of an important game. The Grizzlies got the Cavaliers tonight. It's going to be a very important game, but there's several premier matchups. ABC and ESPN has a great slate tonight. You got Knicks, Celtics starting here in a few minutes. Mavericks, Warriors, a play-in game that has massive implications on the playoff picture. Grizzlies, Cavaliers, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Thunder, Timberwolves, the nightcap on ESPN. It's a great Sunday slate. Is there a game in particular that you're looking for?
I mean, overall, this is just beautiful to see now that other sports or now that football is over. The NBA is going to get these Sunday slates just as this. And, I mean, obviously, this Grizzlies Cavaliers, you got the 1 seed in the East, a 2 seed in the West. I mean, as a Grizzlies fan, I'm very excited, although I'm not very optimistic about what's going to happen, as we haven't fared greatly against some of the top teams in the league this year. And do I think we're going to win this game? No. I do want to I am interested in this Thunders-Timberwolves rematch from right before the All-Star break, as the Timberwolves actually got a big win over the Thunder. So I do believe the Thunder are going to bounce back on the road. But I like seeing Shea versus I think Anthony Edwards. Yeah, he's back. I love seeing Shea and Anthony Edwards just because of how much we talked about Anthony Edwards in the postseason last year. Is he going to be the face of the league? All this. Well, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, I mean, he's about to win an MVP. He's a first-team All-NBA player, and I do enjoy seeing those two go at it. But overall, I'm just glad basketball is now the premier thing throughout the sports world right now, and it's a great time.
Well said. I'm looking at this Mavericks-Warriors game. I know Anthony Davis and those big guys for the Mavericks aren't playing. That has huge implications on the play-in race. Right now, the Mavericks are sitting at 8, the Warriors at 9. They're a game and a half out. They get a win here, they might be hosting a play-in game. This is a big one, and we talked about the play-in race early. It's two teams that have a lot to play for right now. And it's, like you said, it's just good to see a Sunday slate like this that has so many good teams, so many good matchups. The NBA season's starting to come to an end. We're going to see some really competitive, some really entertaining basketball. I think it's a great time for the sport. Obviously, there's a lot of scrutiny, and we can get into it at a later date about the ratings. But weekends like this, Sundays like this, it's great for the game of basketball, and it's cool to see.
I agree.
So, we appreciate y'all tuning in to the first episode of the State Line Fast Break podcast. Leave us suggestions about what you want to see us talk about in the future, and appreciate y'all tuning in.